I think it's just, you can't even deny it. He is the Democratic presidential frontrunner.
So I saw this clip from CNN, and honestly, I was kind of surprised, because you're going to see a clip here where Jake Tapper and really the entire panel here is acknowledging reality. They are acknowledging that Bernie Sanders is, in fact, the frontrunner in the Democratic primary. So watch this.
First of all, let me just say, Jen Psaki, Bernie Sanders, of declared candidates, overwhelmingly leading in fundraising, leading in polls nationally and in key states, the largest number of individual donors and small dollar amounts. I think it's just, you can't even deny it. He is the Democratic presidential frontrunner of declared candidates.
On April 3rd of 2019.
April 2nd.
April 2nd, sorry, of 2019. I also think 20% of his donors were new. And that's an incredibly impressive number, and one that I think exceeds most people's expectations of what would happen here. I think many Democrats thought that he hit his high water point in 2016, that he'd come back in the race, he'd be leading in the beginning, and then he would kind of fizzle out. That hasn't happened. So there's a reality about the strength of his candidacy, the amount of money he raised, $28 million cash on hand. He's going to be in this through the long haul. Yeah. No doubt about it.
So can I make one more point, too? He has another asset, too, experience. He's actually run a presidential campaign before. Now, Joe Biden may get in, and he'll have that same experience. But when you're on Capitol Hill, like a lot of these other folks that are senators that are running for office, your worst day up on Capitol Hill is like every day on a presidential campaign.
Yeah.
And so when you run for a second time, like, things slow down. You don't sweat like a lot of the little bumps that will ultimately come up during the course of a campaign. Sure. And that experience is really another asset that he has.
And both Biden and Sanders did not win their campaigns, but Sanders came a whole lot closer than Biden.
All right. I'm going to have a couple more clips to show you here, but before I get there, are you surprised? Because I'm surprised. This is just not something that CNN historically has done. They have not been willing to acknowledge how powerful the progressive movement so far has been. They haven't been willing to acknowledge the popularity of Bernie Sanders in polling over the past couple of years. Now, look, it's not just like it's sort of surprising that just now they're recognizing, oh wow, Bernie was able to raise all this money. He has 20%. 20% of his donors are new donors. He's in the lead right now in fundraising, and they're small dollar donors. It's kind of weird for them to just now acknowledge this. I mean, if they're going to acknowledge it at all, it's kind of weird that just now they are acknowledging it, because for the past couple years, Bernie has been leading in polling in terms of the most popular politician in the country. This shouldn't be news if you've been paying attention. But if you only watch CNN and if you only watch MSNBC, yeah, these numbers may have surprised you. But for anybody else paying attention, this is not all that surprising that Bernie was able to raise the most money. Now, one thing I want to respond to here. So one of the pundits on there said that many Democrats thought that Bernie would fizzle out. Yes, they did. And those are the same Democrats that are being paid to be on television to inform you. Meanwhile, people like me are not getting paid a CNN check and have been telling you this the entire time, that Bernie Sanders, in fact, is not going to fizzle out, that he will be the front runner in the Democratic primary. And I'm not basing this based on, just my guesses. I'm looking at reality. I'm looking at polling. I'm understanding the fact that Bernie's name recognition is now higher than it ever was. So when he entered in 2015, very few people actually knew who Bernie was. Yet he was able to close a 60-point gap to Hillary Clinton. And that shows you the power of his message. It wasn't just about, Bernie being the only other choice in the primary. No, it was about Bernie building an actual grassroots movement of small dollar donors and volunteers and acting on a progressive message, an anti-establishment progressive message of actually discussing issues like Medicare for all and how and tax cuts for the rich and tax cuts for corporations, discussing these issues that a lot of people are feeling. Money in politics, another massive issue that everybody understands is a problem, but money in politics was never a topic of conversation in the mainstream press until Bernie entered the race in 2015. So this shouldn't really be surprising to anybody. Now, I have two more clips to show. This first one, it's going to be a quick one because this is going to be David Urban, a former Trump advisor, who just makes a ridiculous comparison. Watch.
Just to put the money thing in context, Kevin McCarthy, who's the minority leader, not running for president, raised $23 million first quarter. Kind of put the dollar chase in context.
For his reelection or for the NRCC?
For the NRCC. But my point is, he's out, and that's a whole lot of more money than any of these candidates raised so far.
All right. Let me show you how stupid of a comment this was. Okay, so the NRCC is the National Republican Congressional Committee. So Kevin McCarthy is the minority leader there, raising money for these other candidates. Now, all we have to do is look at the differences between how Bernie Sanders raises money compared to the Republican Party and how they raise money. So Bernie Sanders, again, no corporate money, no private fundraisers. All of his fundraising is from individual donors. 99.5% of donations under $200. Donations averaging right now $20 a piece. That's where his money is coming from, actual people. Now compare that to the Republican Party. So let's take a look at their small dollar figure. So this is Kevin McCarthy. So Kevin McCarthy raising money. 0.2% of that money that he raises comes from small individual contributions. That money right now is 99.5% for Bernie Sanders, but for Kevin McCarthy, 0.28%. I mean, there's a clear and obvious difference here. Now, where is that money coming from? Where's he actually getting his money from? Well, look at the top three contributors: Goldman Sachs, MetLife, Citigroup, Wall Street. That's where the majority of Republican money comes from. And if you go deeper into industries here, you have securities and investment, which is Wall Street, real estate, oil and gas, insurance, pharmaceuticals. So understand, the Republican Party is completely corrupted. They are completely bought by these big industries that are not looking to help you, that are looking to benefit themselves. So when you get all this money from Wall Street, do you really think any Republican's going to support breaking up the big banks? Of course not. When you get all this money from the oil and gas industry, do you think any Republican is actually going to do anything real about climate change? Of course not. When you get all this money from pharmaceuticals and the insurance industry, do you really think any Republican is going to support Medicare for all or universal coverage? Of course not. So understand here the differences. Bernie raises his money from small individual donors and is not bought off by these large industries. Republicans are able to raise $23 million because they are completely corrupted by these large industries. Now, let me go to the last clip here where it's just more Bernie praise.
Take a look at this. The Sanders campaign said 99.5% of their donations were $100 or less. The average donation around $20. Most donors, most of them were younger than 39 years old.
Yeah.
Those are great numbers for Bernie Sanders.
They're fantastic numbers because those numbers also represent volunteers. They represent voters. They represent people who have their own networks that you can then ask them to tap into to bring in more dollars and more volunteers.
There you go. And that comment was from Karen Finney, who is a former Hillary Clinton surrogate. So even the former Hillary Clinton supporters have to admit that Bernie Sanders right now is clearly in the lead here. Now, will this continue? Will CNN continue to acknowledge reality? At this point, it's kind of hard to deny it. I mean, the numbers are so clear, they're so obvious. But what this also tells you is very likely these networks are going to start being a little more critical of Bernie Sanders. Because look, ultimately, these are corporate networks. They don't want to have to, raise their wages. They don't want to have to have their taxes raised. They're concerned about themselves. They don't want to have to worry about all the money they get from the insurance industry, from pharmaceutical companies. They don't want that to go away. They have a vested interest to push back against a Bernie Sanders candidacy. So my guess is they will do that. Now, luckily here, I mean, to his credit, Jake Tapper has been right more times than most of these cable news hosts. He has had some good moments. He's also had some terrible moments, so he's gone back and forth. But when it comes to this, I mean, they're having an actual honest discussion about who is leading here, and it's refreshing to see.